What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on these analysis. We're going to be looking at MSTR and Bitcoin today. So we are still trending underneath our long-term trend line that we want to hold, this gray one here, and we are also underneath this white downward sloping trend line. We are nearing this key level of support, one of the stronger levels that we have here. This level and this level are probably the two strongest levels outside of this one over here. We'll see if we can get a bounce off of here. We got a strong move to the upside after touching it over here the prior week. And then this week, we gapped down below and then we held lower prices throughout. We're still in the same camp where we're just going to chop until we finally make a decision to either break out to the upside or chop until we break to the downside and then continue on down if we can hold the move. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's just a wick off of this level and we start to push back up to the upside, break this structure, and eventually make it back into this channel here. Of course, we need Bitcoin to go on a pretty severe rally. Right now, Bitcoin's sitting at 108. So Bitcoin falling off is obviously going to hurt MSTR. And MSTR tends to front run Bitcoin's fall offs anyways. Not surprised by that at all. If we overlay it, you can kind of see that MSTR started to drop and then Bitcoin, followed that. And it seems like it happens time and time again where we'll see the peak just prior to Bitcoin's peak and then the fall off after MSTR falls off. MSTR peaked first, then Bitcoin, then the fall off, and then Bitcoin followed as well. So this could be the same thing that we have been seeing prior, so nothing different here. I do think when you look on the regular scale, we could be seeing the same thing all over again, where we have this bull flag, run up, bull flag, run up. Now this is on the weekly, chart, but when you look back all the way over here on the daily, you have these structures that look pretty identical. You have this bull flag here, and granted, this is on the daily time frame, so this is a very short period. You can see from November 30th, 2020, and the breakout was December 24th. So just a little over a month, or a little under a month actually. And then you had your breakout, but it was pretty much the same structure: a bull flag, run up, a bull flag, then a run up and a peak. So if that were to play out exactly the same this time, I wonder if we're going to end up getting that just on a larger time frame, where we have a run up, bull flag, run up, bull flag with a little bit of deviation, still pretty much a flag overall, and maybe we see a run up still if we were to imitate the last move. Now I like to look at it on the logarithmic scale. I think it just looks a lot cleaner. Yeah, we can actually take a look on the daily too, on the log scale, see what it looks like. Yeah, it's practically the same thing. It just looks a little bit neater. But you can see a run up, bull flag, run up, bull flag, and then another run up. So I think we're seeing that on a larger scale. We'll see if we can actually get that final move though. That would be, of course, very bullish. Everybody would love that. For us to get a move all the way up there, Bitcoin would have to really go on an insane rally, and MSTR would have to get past some of this negative sentiment that it has going on with lawsuits. People are saying that they're misled. On the weekly SMA, we closed right on the 50, slightly above it, but practically right on it at 334. The 50 is right there. So hopefully that holds as a key level of support. If we break underneath that next week and hold it throughout the entire week and we retest it, that could potentially push us to the levels underneath this structure. Hopefully not. Hopefully it serves as a strong level of support, but just by the look of it, it looks like we could be falling underneath there, at least to retest or test that level and see if it's going to be a strong level. And right now here on the daily, we actually had our lowest close here at 334 on the daily, all the way back since April or so, the end of April. So we'll see where that takes us. And like I said, you do have these bear flags that could be potentially playing out. That was the first one. It looks like it played out to the T, and we'll see if we get another one here. I don't know if this one's going to play out. If we were to fall underneath this 50 here, and we get that close, I think that's going to increase the odds of this bear flag playing out. So hopefully we don't get that close next week underneath the 50. But if we do, then I think the odds of this bear flag playing out starts to increase as we fall underneath this structure. But if we can get that bounce, I think we'll be in a pretty solid position where we can turn this thing around pretty quickly. Hopefully get some kind of double bottom. It is already starting to form that, as you can see here. You have this first part of the double bottom, and then potentially, hopefully a higher low, and we can continue up, break the structure, and start playing with this upward sloping trend line, how we were prior. Right now, we're just pretty much waiting and seeing. We're kind of just in that sideways chop, I would imagine. This level should hold us at least throughout next week, I would imagine, unless Bitcoin really falls off. If Bitcoin really falls off, then of course expect to lose this structure. Now for Bitcoin, this is a key level of support. We definitely don't want to lose this. This is probably the strongest level that we have out of all of these. It's probably to the equivalent of this structure over here. Very, very strong level. So we've seen a lot of rejection, and the fact that we broke above it and now we're here again, I would hope that we get a bounce. It would make sense, but remember, we can always close underneath it, and if we do, that's going to be a strong level that we're going to have to break back through. If we were to close underneath here, get a weekly close, the next retest was more than likely going to be some kind of retest to the downside. And then the next major level would probably be around this 100 mark, somewhere in this ballpark. Now, hopefully we still have a day and 23 hours, so there's plenty of time. Hopefully this turns into a wick and we can start to push back up. At least closing somewhere at 112, ideally would be a back above 113 to close above the structure here, closing back above here, and then eventually start to make our way up and start playing with this upward sloping trend line here. And eventually back to this, or up to this dotted line here, or the midline of this entire channel. That's where we want to see price touching. That's where we could potentially see our top. Depends on how crazy altcoin season gets, but that's going to be depending on the Federal Reserve, Ethereum, the Fed having to increase their balance sheet. That would help Ethereum and altcoins start to outperform Bitcoin, which would ignite altcoin season and all the FOMO and all that. And that's how you could get those crazy moves surpassing the midline of this channel. But if we were not to see that, then I would expect our top to more than likely hit somewhere on the middle of this channel here, this midline. Maybe wick past it, and then that'll be the end of the cycle until the next 4 years. But that's a good time to accumulate. So don't even worry about missing the top, honestly, in my opinion. Not financial advice, but if you like Bitcoin, you should love it when we get a crash 50-60% hopefully this year, or 2026, I'm sorry. Hopefully we get a crash in 2026, maybe 27, and you can accumulate as much as possible and ride this thing up for the next 3-4 years, going into like 29 or so. But yeah, like I said, this is a strong level of support. Hopefully we get a bounce here. We're still in the middle of it right now. We have confluence right now between this key structure and the 20-week SMA. So that's going to be a very strong level to break. And that's why I say it could be a little rough if we close underneath it, because now this very strong structure is now going to be acting as a ceiling instead of a floor. And that's definitely what we don't want to see. On the daily, we already have our 20 crossing the 50, usually signaling a little bit of downside. Let's see, last time we saw the 20 surpass the 50. So actually last time we saw the 20 fall underneath the 50 was over here, February 2025. From that point on, if you take it from this wick specifically, you can see that we actually dropped 23%. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but sometimes when you get those crossing of the moving averages, it could signal downside. And when we had it over here, if you take it from this candle where it actually crossed, then this was almost a 10% move. This could be signaling downside, and if you were to actually take it from where we crossed, I guess it would be one of these here, so maybe from this one, I guess from the open, we're down 6%. So if we were to fall, 10%, that would take you to 103. 20% would take us way down here. I don't think we're going to go down that far, but you never know. Bitcoin's volatile, so things can happen. Global liquidity continues to rise up. We had a major sell-off on global liquidity as the dollar rose, and now the dollar is dropping a little bit, and we're starting to see a recovery on global liquidity. Maybe we're somewhere in the middle of this drawdown here, and we have a nice leg or two to go for Bitcoin. We'll see if that flows into the end of the year. Maybe this is part of our August-September weakness before continuing this move higher, and maybe we can get that nice blow off top in November or December, maybe early 26, maybe like a January, February thing. We'll see, of course. Every cycle is going to be a little different. They usually rhyme, but they have their own little more characteristics to them. But I think everything's still pretty much intact as it should be. We have fallen underneath our 8-week EMA, so we want to reclaim that. That's usually a nice indicator for our short-term momentum. And on the 8-day EMA, it's kind of the same concept. And as you can see as well, on the daily, we just close inside of the structure, which isn't the best sign. We close underneath these wicks. So this could be trying to signal some kind of downside. We'll see. We're still holding the structure for now, but as we continue to make fresh lows and fall underneath the structure, it's going to start to increase the odds of making it to that next key level of support. Tether dominance has been ping-ponging back and forth. It kept trying to break out and then rejecting to the downside, so it was looking good, like we were going to hold this downward sloping trend line. But now this thing's trying to push, and we have a day and 23 hours. So it's creating a little trend to the upside. Actually, when you take a look here, you can see that it's forming nice little structure to the upside, which we don't want to see because that's bearishness for Bitcoin. And it's kind of creating somewhat of an ascending triangle, I guess you could say. If you were to draw that top there, and then you were to connect these bottoms for this upward sloping trend line, you have your ascending triangle right there formed right here. I'll just put it in a different color so you can see that clear as day. An ascending triangle, which potentially shows higher levels. We definitely don't want to see that. Ascending triangles usually play out like that and then break out, and you see a higher push. If we were to see that, then Bitcoin would potentially see lower levels. When you pull this horizontal structure from over here that we had established, hopefully we find some kind of rejection here, and it slows down tether dominance. But right now, this thing is looking like it's trying to break out of this ascending triangle to the upside. Hopefully, like I said, this is some rejection that can flip this thing around, and maybe we can start to form a nice little head and shoulders as we potentially have like a left shoulder here. Maybe we start to form the head as we make contact with that. We come back down, retest this, and then we fall down, and then we can start seeing some lower levels, and that would be a nice spike on Bitcoin. Of course, that does not have to play out. I'm just looking for the move before it happens, kind of thing, which would mean some kind of weakness for Bitcoin, a nice little rally, a little more weakness before actually continuing down. And the right shoulder doesn't have to push all the way up there like I drew out. It can stay around this area here. It doesn't have to be a very significant rally to the upside and see major weakness on Bitcoin. Now, if we were to make it to that structure, we do have these SMAs right there. So that'd be confluence to push price back down with the structure and the 20-week SMA. And on the daily, we actually have the 20 surpassing the 50. I don't know if it actually did yet, but it's relatively close. It's right there. And that could be signaling higher prices on tether dominance, which is weakness for Bitcoin. Ultimately, we want to see a move down to this blue line here, which is where we could more than likely find our local top for Bitcoin. And it could be the local top for the cycle, or it could be just a temporary top before continuing higher. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. Make sure you check out the pinned comment for the Discord through WAP and see if you guys are interested. Hop in there, building a community little by little, day by day, and I'll keep you guys, posted and more in depth on all of these things. Appreciate all your support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.